Blue Eyes White Destiny may in fact be the best structure deck that we have, and combining 3 of them is absolutely insane. So today I'm going to show you my list for 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Destiny. Alright, so to start off we have our 3 copies of every starter in the deck. Now honestly, this deck already comes with multiple copies of all the main starters and already comes with 3 copies of Sage with Eyes of Blue, so you can actually run this deck quite well with just the 1 copy, but it certainly works a lot better to have 3 because it means you have 3 copies of many cards that are all 1 card combos. So we've got Sage with Eyes of Blue, Maiden of White, Wishes for Eyes of Blue. These 3 are the best cards to start with, and they are all 1 card combos, which I will show in the next video, so be sure to subscribe for that. We've also got 3 copies of Neo Kaiser Seahorse, Roar of the Blue-Eyed Dragons, and Dictator of D. All of these can also open up a 1 card combo, though it's not quite as strong as the first 3, but it's still definitely a good board to end on. And that's all you really need from this deck, and this 1 copy already comes with multiple copies of most of these cards, which is really fantastic. So it runs the same way whether you've got 1 or 3, but the biggest benefit of having multiple copies is having multiple copies of every card in the extra deck, particularly Spirit with Eyes of Blue. Very good to have 2 of this. But before we get into that, next let's look at our remaining light tuners. We've got 1 copy of Master with Eyes of Blue. Initially I wasn't going to include this card in the deck, but there is 1 combo where you can use this card and uses it quite well, and allows you to again finish off a 1 card combo and continue your plays to get a proper end board going. Also of course got 3 copies of Effect Veiler. This is a great hand trap and can also be searched with your Sage with Eyes of Blue. So an excellent card all around, level 1 light tuner, so it can be used for all of your synchro summoning. Yeah, and just good hand trap to have, works well with the deck. 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Now, I know a lot of people are only running 2 copies of this card, and that is absolutely fair, and probably a little bit more efficient to just have 2 copies of Blue Eyes, but I run 3 for a reason, and the reason is that quite often there comes a situation where just having 1 extra copy of Blue Eyes in the deck or hand or graveyard, 1 extra extension, 1 extra play, and lets you quite often go into Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon on top of all the things we're going to do. Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon is of course not that broken of a card, but it's another thing that we can do and helps us out with the OTK on the 2nd turn, so that's why I like to run 3 copies, but of course Blue Eyes is a brick, so you don't want to open up with this, and you certainly don't want to open up with, you know, 3 Blue Eyes or even these 5 plus just hand traps. Not ideal, but because we have so many starters in the deck, I mean, if you're not drawing these cards anyway, there's not a whole lot you can do, whether you run 3 Blue Eyes or 2. You know, we've got 3 copies of every starter in the deck, and if you don't open with those, not a lot you can do. So I run 3 copies of Blue Eyes. I don't think it slows the deck down that much, and it opens up more plays. For our other level 8 Blue Eyes cards, we of course have Blue Eyes Jet Dragon and Dragon Spirit of White. So you might be wondering why these cards. They don't have special summon effects, they don't do all that much, and sort of need to be normal summoned, but there is a way to bring them out, and that is of course with Heretic Seal of the Heavenly Spears. Heretic Seal's effect tributes itself to bounce an opponent's monster to the hand, and when it is tributed, including by this effect, you can special summon a dragon from your deck. So the dragons that we summon with this effect will be either our Blue Eyes Jet Dragon or Dragon Spirit of White. Both of these have excellent effects, especially that can be used on your opponent's turn. Dragon Spirit of White can, when it's summoned, normal or special, banish 1 of your opponent's spell or trap cards, so that's an extra removal, gets rid of the back row, fantastic card. And Blue Eyes Jet Dragon just provides protection for your, well, for other cards you control, can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, which is fantastic, very good, especially in an emergency. You can spring this on your opponent's turn. It also has an effect that special summons itself from the graveyard whenever a card on the field is destroyed, including your opponent's cards, making it very easy to bring out if it's in the graveyard. And we can send it to the graveyard with the effect of Kaiser Seahorse, or potentially even your Dictator of D, but mainly with Neo Kaiser Seahorse, can send it from the deck to the graveyard. Next up we have 1 copy of the field spell Mausoleum of White. This helps us continue our combos and is of course searched with Spirit with Eyes of Blue. We only need one copy of this card, and we really only use it for its first effect to normal summon an extra level 1 Light Tuner. This is for the main 1-card combo of the deck, and for a couple of them, just gets that extra normal summon, and of course it can be searched. So yeah, we don't want multiple, we don't want it in our starting hand, we want to search it, so we like to just keep it in the deck. Of course, if you start with it, not a problem. One copy of Ultimate Fusion. Again, we can search this card with True Light, and we don't often use it. It's good for a finishing move, but you don't really want to draw it in your starting hand. So one copy is absolutely fine. Set it on your opponent's turn to use it when your turn comes around. Of course, one copy of True Light gets searched with Maiden of White, either from the hand deck or graveyard, and places it face up. So we only need one copy. Unless this card gets banished, then that's not going to be a problem. We will always be able to access True Light, and it is one of the best cards in the deck. It's just a fantastic card, does everything, with only one major drawback: just don't let it get destroyed, pretty much. But we have ways around that to protect our cards. One copy of Majesty of the White Dragons. You only really need one. It destroys up to 3 cards on the field. How often are you going to need to do that? You only need to do that once, right? So one copy of Majesty gets searched with True Light, of course. And one copy of Distant Rivals. Again, a lot of people don't run this, but I think it's worth having. There is the point that if you do the combos properly, you end up with multiple disruptions and 2 negates plus, destruction, removal cards. By that point, you don't really need Destined Rivals, especially with all the hand traps, but you can still search it off of True Light and negate all of your opponent's monster effects. So I think that that's worth having, and is a little bit better than having Infinite Impermanence. Imperm is obviously good because it's a hand trap, but you can play around with it. You've got Effect Veiler as well, so I swapped out one Imperm for Destined Rivals just because it's searchable and has a slightly better effect, except for the fact that it's not a hand trap. Speaking of hand traps, we also have Called by the Grave. This is absolutely necessary, would run more if I could, and if this deck came with Crossout Designator, that would be fantastic. This deck is weak to, things like Ash Blossom, especially, and some other hand traps as well, but especially your Ash Blossom and things like that. So Called by the Grave, definitely needed. Since all of these cards are 1-card combos, you aren't stopped completely by one interruption, but there will come a point where it just gets a little bit too much. Speaking of hand traps, again, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom, of course, 2 copies of Nibiru. I bought 2 copies of Nibiru because we've also got Majesty and a bunch of disruptions, so you're probably not going to get Nibiru off that often, but if you have to go second, good to have one. Also got one in the side deck for going second. And 2 copies of Imperm, again, got one in the side deck for going second. Great card to have. So that's all for the main deck. Again, the main strategy of this deck, we've got a bunch of 1-card combos, a bunch of starter cards to go off of. Sage with Eyes of Blue and Maiden of White in particular. Fantastic cards. You want any of these in your hand, and you can set up an excellent field. And your field is going to look like a Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon on the field, as well as Heretic Seal of the Heavenly Spears, and more often than not, an Effect Veiler in the hand as well. This will give you 1 bounce with Heretic Seal during your opponent's turn, return a card to your opponent's hand, and a negation by using Spirit Dragon to go into Ultimate Spirit Dragon, which is an Omni Negate. So fantastic field, lots of disruption with this deck, and heaps of hand traps, heaps of room for hand traps as well. So fantastic. Overall, should be able to disrupt most of your opponent's plays. Now let's take a look at the extra deck. What have I done here? Obviously, we're limited to whatever is in the structure deck, so just multiple copies of those. But we've got the most important ones at 3 and the least important ones at 1. But starting off, we have Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon at 2. Now, why do I have this at 2? So, first of all, Neo Blue Eyes is very important to the strategy. This is actually the card that you're going to equip to your Blue Eyes with the effect of Wishes for Eyes of Blue. When this is in the graveyard, banish it to equip a fusion monster to a Blue Eyes you control. That's going to be this card. Reason is because when this card is in the graveyard, you can banish it to negate a effect that targets a Blue Eyes monster you control. So this just, again, adds more protection to your Blue Eyes, stops them from being targeted, and hopefully stops them from being destroyed or whatever your opponent plans to do to them. So that's why we have at least 1 copy, but the reason I run 2 is just because it's another option, you know, if you end up with Ultimate Fusion, or you end up being able to do Roar of the Blue-Eyed Dragons from the graveyard, then you can go into this card, and it is a good card to have on the field. It's a very powerful monster, good for the OTK, can attack 3 times. It's just all around a good card to have on the field. You won't go into it that often, but when it comes up, it's an option. Same goes for Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. Won't come up that often, but when it does, it's an option. Great for the OTK for just hitting your opponent. And at the very least, you know, it can't be destroyed by battle. It's kind of hard to get rid of. It's a good card to have, can attack twice. Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon does actually come up quite often. It's unaffected by trap cards or effects and can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. So that's not bad at all. It also has the bonus effect of setting a trap in your graveyard, and we have quite a few powerful traps in this deck, so that could come up. But yeah, this does actually come up quite often, and running 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon means that it can come up quite often. You can get 2 copies of Blue Eyes on the field, use one for your Synchros, and use the other for Tyrant Dragon, which just ends up quite well. It's not a fantastic card, but it's an option. It's a thing that we can do. Next, of course, we have 2 copies of Ultimate Spirit Dragon. Only 2 because you're not likely to go into more than 1 anyway, but you definitely want to have it, so running 2 is a good option, good to have. This negates everything and will be one of the main cards that we go into with the 1-card combos. 1 copy of Azurai's Silver Dragon. It's just a better option than other things and gives us, you know, it just gives us more options, more things to do. If we want, you could swap it out for a 3rd copy of something else, but it's not really needed. You'll almost never go into this, but it's just another option. 2 copies of Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. Hopefully 1 is all you need. That's what you're going to end on, is a Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. Sets up your Ultimate Spirit Dragon. This is your end board. This is one of the main cards in the deck. But you don't need multiple copies of it. Of course, we run 2 in case something happens to it, and because we don't have a whole lot of options, it's one of the best cards in the deck. And this card is fantastic effect, allows you to go into your Ultimate Spirit Dragon on your opponent's turn, and then when Ultimate Spirit Dragon is destroyed, you can go back into Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon or any other Blue Eyes Dragon monster from your graveyard. So, great card to have. 2 copies, you can go into 2, probably won't, but it's another option. 1 copy of Indigo Eyes Silver Dragon. I was tempted to put in 2, but only ended up doing 1. You'll probably only ever be able to bring out 1 anyway. It's got a pretty good effect, just needs a normal monster if it wants to attack directly, but can bring Blue Eyes back from your graveyard and give it an extra 1,000 attack. So that's a pretty good card, pretty good effect, and just an excellent way to continue your plays on the 2nd turn when you're going for the OTK. Quite often with this deck, I'll end up with a board of 5 different Blue Eyes Dragon monsters, like big monsters, so OTKing on the 2nd turn, very easy to do. Finally, for our Link monsters, we have 2 copies of Heretic Seal of the Heavenly Spears. This is one of the most powerful Link monsters in the game, probably, especially, I mean, it has to be in Dragon decks, but especially for Dragon decks. This card, during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can tribute 1 monster from your hand or field. It's usually going to be itself, and then return 1 face-up card on the field to the hand. So this can bounce any of your opponent's face-up cards, whether it be monsters, spells, or traps, usually going to be monsters, and then, if it's tributed, you can special summon a dragon monster from your hand or deck and make its attack and defense 0. That's a fantastic ability. So this not only bounces your opponent's card, but special summons a dragon from your deck, which, like I talked about before, Blue Eyes Jet Dragon for protection, or Dragon Spirit of White to get rid of a back row card. Fantastic card all around to have. Like, this is just amazing card, and is one of the cards that we're going to end on. Finally, 3 copies of Spirit with Eyes of Blue. This is definitely the most important card in the deck. This is what all of our 1-card combos go into, and is the reason that we can have a 1-card combo with Neo Kaiser Seahorse and Dictator of D. Even with Master of Eyes of Blue and Effect Veiler, you can go into your Spirit with Eyes of Blue and just pretty much have a 1-card combo. It's a fantastic card. So what this does, when it's summoned, it's only a Link 1, so you just need to summon most of your level 4 or lower monsters. Easy to summon. and then go into this card. When it's summoned, you add Mausoleum of White from your deck to your hand, which gives you a extra normal summon, but it also means that you can use Mausoleum of White's effect to send a normal monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, obviously being your Blue Eyes White Dragon. You can just go ahead, target Spirit, send Blue Eyes to the graveyard, and then use Spirit's effect, tributing itself to special summon the Blue Eyes from your graveyard, which then allows you to go into all your, your Heretic Seal and your Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon very easily, just getting out your Blue Eyes multiple times per turn, linking, synchro summoning, etc. For most of these combos, you will need 2 copies of Spirit. You can do some of the combos, or at least one of them, with only 1 copy, so it does still work with this deck. So it does still work with only 1 copy of the deck, but it is a lot more powerful to have 2 copies at least. So you want to pick up at least 2 of these if you want to play this deck to ultimate efficiency. Do you actually need 3 copies of this deck? The only things I run 3 of that you can't get from 2 copies of this deck is, I think, Wishes, Roar, and Ash Blossoms. So if you cut those down to 2, it's best to have Wishes at 3, but if you cut all of those down to 2, you can actually get away with just running 2 copies of this deck, which makes this even cheaper than normal 3x deck videos. This is a really good structured deck, just running 3 of all the starters. It's fantastic. Finally, let's take a quick look at the side deck. Nothing much, again, just running this. You can make a better side deck if you have other cards, but just with this deck, 1 copy of Nibiru for going second, same with your Impermanence for going second, 2 copies of Destined Rivals, it's okay card and is good to have, 3 Burst Drain. The reason we have 3 copies of everything is not to run 3 copies, but just because there aren't any better cards worth running from this deck. So Burst Drain Destruction, basically a Raigeki for the deck. Trade in, good especially if you keep ending up with multiple level 8s in your hand. We run 5 in the deck, so it's not likely enough to put this in the main deck, but if that's just what keeps happening for you, maybe swapping a trade-in could be good. Another 2 copies of Majesty and Ultimate Creature of Destruction. This is actually worth talking about. So this card at the very least means that you will survive a turn, which makes it quite good to run, but not good enough to run in the main deck. But if you're up against decks like Tenpai, which, OTK style decks like that, this gets you, you get a Blue Eyes, and this makes it unaffected by card effects, so your Tenpai and can't be destroyed by battle as well. So decks like Tenpai just won't be able to finish you off if you have this card. So this is definitely one for the side deck, but in most situations, you're not going to need it. But in those cases, cases where you do need it, definitely want to chuck that in. So that is all that I have to say about this deck, pretty much. It's very standard, just 3 copies of all the 1-card combo, all your starter cards, and then just a whole bunch of hand traps and support cards that can be searched. Very easy to run this deck, it's very simple, but if you want all the combos for this deck, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think of this deck, let me know any changes that you would make when making this deck, and be sure to stick around and keep an eye out for a combo video coming soon. Thank you all so very much for watching. My name has been Senkara, as always, and until next time, see ya.